Another year, another disappointing start for the McLaren Formula 1 team. This is starting to become a trend, isn't it? Hey there guys, I'm Will. Welcome to FP1, and come the end of the 2023 season, it would have been 6 years since McLaren ousted the world's grumpiest man in Ron Dennis, with Zak Brown replacing the Briton as CEO. The next few years saw the outfit make steady progress. A landmark podium in 2019 preceded more strong results the following year, all the while securing key signings in the form of Carlos Sainz, Andreas Seidel, and Daniel Ricciardo. Look, I didn't say they all worked out, did I? The team's form grew and grew, with Daniel's Monza win in 2021 marking the outfit's first trip back to the top step since 2012. However, since then, it all seems to have stalled. 2022 was meant to be the year where those in the midfield could finally start to challenge the front runners at the top of the sport. We had new regulations and the budget cap, provided people followed it. Regardless, the team took this opportunity and proceeded to set it on fire and throw it in a bin, last season being a significant step backwards, seeing them fall to 5th in the constructors' standings. With 2023 seeing Seidel jump into the pile of cash waiting for him at Sauber, maybe he made the call at the right time. McLaren having an embarrassing debut in Bahrain last week, their engines taking a stand in solidarity with Gary Lineker and boycotting the race. And with that, we turn our attention towards their two drivers. Oscar Piastri has now managed to set himself on fire with the torch used to burn bridges with the rest of the grid, and Lando Norris, well, he's stuck in a rather difficult position. In 2021, Nozza agreed a new long-term deal with McLaren, seeing him stick with the papaya outfit until the end of 2025. At the time, this seemed like a sensible deal, though you start to wonder if he's regretting that now. Lando is a highly sought-after driver in Formula 1. Though his fan base hold the collective brain power of a dead goldfish, they'll rack up millions and prove incredibly appetizing to a team as far as the commercial front is concerned. You've then got his raw speed, which he's more than proved by keeping up with Sainz and, though I hate to admit it, wiping the floor with Daniel Ricciardo. Early signs seem to point to a similar advantage over Piastri, but frankly it's way too early to call that one yet, and I don't want the Twitter heat either. So what I'm saying is, as long as Lando doesn't need to make a call to switch to Inters, he can keep pace with any of the top guys in Formula 1. But can he do that with McLaren? Well, at the age of 23, he's at least not running out of time. Lando has many years left in him in Formula 1, so realistically he could play the waiting game. McLaren have a new wind tunnel facility opening later this year, and though it will still take time to set up and calibrate, it's highly likely to reward the team in a significant leap in performance. Lando would also keep his first driver status at the team, something he'd struggle to secure at any of the other big players further up the grid. Just ask yourself, can Sergio Perez or Carlos Sainz realistically win a championship with their respective teams, especially when Leclerc is Ferrari's golden boy and Red Bull management are busy sucking Verstappen's? Well, you get the picture. That then makes staying with McLaren both a safe and risky option for Norris, as it comes down to having a car that lets you fight for titles, or a team that lets you fight for them. If McLaren really can turn their fortunes around, then Lando's in the best possible position, but honestly, Boris Johnson is more likely to win on naked attraction than for that to happen. Taking a team from the midfield to the top of the sport is by no means impossible. We've seen it happen before, with a great example being this season with Aston Martin. Now that comes down to a combination of new facilities, big technical signings like Dan Fallows, and of course Fernando Alonso. McLaren have got that new wind tunnel, but they don't have Fernando Alonso, and rather than making big signings, they're instead hemorrhaging talent to the point where they're hiring engineers from Ferrari of all places. As a result, I think it's time Norris looks to move on, and make a fresh start somewhere else on the grid, which of course begs the question, where exactly would that fresh start land him? Well, let's narrow down his options. Norris will want somewhere that will get him in a race-winning car as soon as possible, and while we can't predict the future, if we look at the current state of play, that singles out 4 possible options. First, and arguably the least likely, would be Aston Martin. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but Mike Crack has produced a monster this season. Interpret that sentence however you like. Given their rate of development throughout 2022, it wouldn't surprise me to see a couple of Aston wins this year. But do they actually have room for Norris? Alonso seems content so far, and yes, we may have said that at Alpine, and Ferrari, and McLaren, but he does seem to have finally found a winning combination here. With Stroll being super glued to the seat in the other car, Aston won't be looking for a new driver anytime soon. The earliest likely being at the end of 2025 when Alonso's reported 3-year deal would expire. Oh, and I wonder who else is. Even that being the case, I think Lando will be jumping the McLaren ship earlier than this, so let's rule them out for now. Nozza's next option then would be Ferrari. Now stick with me here. When it comes to contracts, the team may well struggle to hold on to Charles Leclerc if they keep up their current run of form, or lack of it. Equally, with no one besides maybe Ollie Behrman shining in their junior roster, could they look to fill that gap with anyone other than Carlos Sainz? Now, the Twitter drama of Norris ousting his beloved aside, this may well be an option. On the other side, if Charles were to leave, reuniting Lando and Carlos at Ferrari would do a ton for the team commercially, though I personally can't see a future like that happening. And just remembering for a second that we're talking about winning a title, and Ferrari, let's move on to Red Bull Racing. This may seem like a strange decision, but if you know your history, then you'll know Norris has been linked with the Red Bull outfit before. Back in 2018, Norris was being lined up for a mid-season move into Toro Rosso to replace the failing Brendan Hartley. This of course never came to fruition, though more recently it was revealed that Norris did enter talks with rival teams before signing his current deal with McLaren, with one of those outfits heavily rumoured to be Red Bull. With Sergio Perez's relationship with the team still tarnished after whatever happened in 2022, Norris could well put himself in the frame once again with the team to look elsewhere. The question comes down to whether this is a sensible move for Lando. Red Bull will always prioritise one driver over another, and in fairness, that strategy has worked to great effect over the last couple of seasons. Realistically, are the team all of a sudden going to leave Max Verstappen in a ditch to start praising Lord Nozza? No. Now with Verstappen to uphold what he said in the past about leaving the sport in 2028, then maybe that presents a long-term opportunity for the Brit to take over as leader of that team. But it's still a long way away, and by no means a guarantee. So if Lando isn't headed to Aston, Ferrari or Red Bull, then where exactly will he find himself were he to leave his home at McLaren? Well, in my opinion, which, yes, doesn't mean much these days, Norris will find himself settling at none other than Mercedes. Now let's annoy all of my hashtag Team LH fans. The start of the season for Merc hasn't been particularly great, and for possibly the first time, we've started to see rifts emerging between the team and their star driver Lewis Hamilton. At the point where the outfit also want hashtag blessed to put pen to paper on a new contract, the timing couldn't possibly be worse. As a result, the team have been exploring other options, with most recent rumours implying a potential interest in Leclerc, where Hamilton to call it a day at the end of 2023. But could that interest also shift onto Norris? Well, I personally think that wouldn't be so bad of an option. Merc may well be going through a rough patch right now, but they're not miles away from the front of the grid. If the team can learn from their mistakes, then they can be back fighting at the top of the sport, a bit like we saw at the end of 2022. The replacing Hamilton is more or less an impossible task, especially considering the amount he does off-track. Lando, I feel, would fill more of that void compared to someone like a proven race winner like Leclerc, potentially also at a lower salary. So let's make my position clear. I think Lando Norris needs to leave the McLaren F1 team if he wants a shot at race wins and a title in Formula 1. As a result, the Briton won't stay out to the end of his current contract, and unlike Sochi 2021, will make the switch to Mercedes at some point in the next couple of years. That decision will come down solely to whatever Lewis Hamilton decides to do, and I'm sorry Team LH, he won't be in this sport forever. That's my take then. Disagree with me? That's absolutely fine. Let me know down in the comments below. It all helps the algorithm at the end of the day. If you could also drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. And I'd like to end this video by saying a massive thank you to all of the subscribers, patrons and channel members, especially those of you who joined in the last week. Now I'll be back on Sunday with the comedy review for the Human Rights Grand Prix, but until then, have a good one.